480 days without load shedding. It's something of a South African record. Eskom, the most powerful power utility in Africa, parastatals had its fair share of controversy and a huge number of chief executives in the last 5 years. This is the MoneyMakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield. Tonight I'm joined by the latest chief executive to take the CEO role at Eskom. Is the acting chief executive, Matshela Koko, who has been appointed the Eskom acting CEO. He's been there since 1996. He's replacing Brian Molefe, who resigned last month, he said, to clear his name after being named in the State of Capture report, with all those phone calls and all those visits to the Gupta compound, of course. Mr. Koko, 24 hours, no regrets?
Not at all. I'm actually having fun. I've been here for 20 years.
Oh, you go.
It's just another day of the 20 years.
It's another day of the 20 years with executive responsibility, but in an acting role. Why have they made you acting CEO? We've got so many acting CEOs in the public sector. Why make you acting and not full-time CEO?
Well, the group executive resigned. Short time, short period. The board decides, the minister decides, and they have decided. I have a work to do, I have a job to do. Let's do the job.
How much real authority do you have as acting chief executive?
I have absolute authority to run the business.
Okay, so total authority to run the business.
Total authority.
If you choose to flick the switch and load shed us tomorrow, you can. You have that authority.
I will not load shed the country. I will not load shed. I have been directed by a very competent executive, Brian Molefe, and he came in, we're in the middle of load shedding. Everybody expected 3 to 5 years. He came in and he said, we'll stop load shedding. We'll do the maintenance and we'll do that without burning diesel, and he's done it. And
at what cost, though, have we avoided load shedding over the last 18 months?
Well, I'm not sure you're talking about rands and cents, but however you look at it, I mean, if you take the unsafe energy of 74 cents per kilowatt, 74 rands per kilowatt hour, that's how much it costs when we have unsafe energy.
So we had a far more stable grid. You've come in to the role now as acting chief executive. Do things change fundamentally at Eskom under your leadership?
Things must change. Things must change. I call the Brian's era the first phase of the transformation, the first phase of the turnaround. This is now the second phase of our turnaround.
What happens in phase 2?
Well, we've just been downgraded by S&P. They've raised 2 issues. They've said the credit line for the government to Eskom expires in January 17, and they need certainty. We need to sort that one out. The second part, they've raised issues about the tariff and the court case. We need to sort that one out. But ultimately, we have to get Eskom less and less reliant on government guarantees. The government has got many priorities. I move from the view that says a state-owned company should not be a burden to the fiscus. And we must do that. And our aim is simple. Increase the margin.
There are 2 ways of increasing the margin. Yes. Either you make the product you produce more expensive, or you reduce the cost of producing that product. What do you do?
Well, that's quite important for us, because what we, in the past, part of our revenue increase was on tariff. And we think that that sets the country on a tariff path that may not support the economy. We need a tariff path that will support the economy, and NERSA must decide on that.
That's National Energy Regulator of South Africa, which has pushed back very, very strongly against successive CEOs' attempts to raise tariffs in the 20 percentiles.
Absolutely. Now, the biggest driver for operating costs was primary energy. We have control now of the diesel cost. We were burning money with diesel before Brian came. We've stopped burning diesel. We're keeping the lights on without using diesel. Our coal costs are coming down drastically. The only part of our primary energy cost that's not coming down is the IPPs. And we need to deal with that. And our view is that to reduce our primary energy costs so that we reduce the cost so that the tariff comes down, we must be able to roll out the renewable IPPs at the cost and time that the Eskom in the country can afford.
Okay, so does this mean that you continue with IPPs, but you just want to renegotiate all the contracts with existing IPPs, or just future contracts with IPPs?
The existing contracts with IPPs stays.
Okay.
We've got contracts that must stay. The future IPPs must come at the cost and the pace that Eskom and the country can afford, so that the tariff is affordable.
Is that not going to be a disincentive to IPPs then, to come and participate in this economy?
Well, we hope not. And it should not be. Because if you read the newspapers, everybody says the renewable costs have drastically come down. And when you listen carefully, what they mean, and they will tell you the renewables are down to 62%, 62 cents per kilowatt hour for solar and wind. Now that's below the Eskom cost.
Yeah.
Now, I have no reason not to sign an IPP that comes to Eskom with a cost that is lower than the Eskom cost of production.
Sure. Okay, so IPPs are back very much on the table because there was some concern 2 or 3 months ago that the IPP projects were being shelved. That's very much still on the agenda?
They're on the agenda, but at the right price.
Okay.
There is no, if tariff is an issue, if affordability is an issue, then Eskom signing IPPs at the cost higher than its average cost of production does not serve the purpose.
What about nuclear? Nuclear, it's the big controversy in South Africa. You are, my research tells me, you Mr. Nuclear, you like nuclear, you're a fan of nuclear energy. Where do we stand?
Most certainly. You know, yesterday in the business report, the minister clarified a lot of things. We have an obligation as a country to meet our carbon budget by 2050. We just come out of COP21, just came out of COP22. The debate on whether we should meet our CO2 budget as a country, I don't think is still on the table. We've committed as a country to a trajectory that reduces our carbon footprint. We've done that. If you do that and you restrict renewables for solar at 1,000 megawatts and wind at 1,800, the numbers are what they are. You will then need a minimum of 1,300 megawatts of nuclear by 2026.
But then you don't restrict renewables. You make the future of energy.
I like that. I like that because I just think that people don't have a feel, and I hope by the end of today people will understand. The current capacity today of Eskom is 44,000 megawatts. The base case scenario has renewables of 55,000 megawatts. Eskom today generates 60% of electricity in the whole of Africa. The base case scenario says you should be able to generate 60% of the power that is currently generated in Africa, more than that, with renewables.
Right. But nuclear is part of the mix.
No. Base case scenario does not include. So it only have 5.5 gigawatts up to 2050. But by and large, you are saying it is possible to supply more than the current size of Eskom.
It's a question. I don't know.
I'm saying it's not possible.
Is it not possible?
In fact,
so in order to reduce carbon emissions, we need to reduce the use of coal. So we need renewables in there, and then your argument is we still need nuclear as part of the mix.
Absolutely.
When do we start spending money on nuclear? Money that we don't have. Your balance sheet can't support it, and the energy minister's already kicked the can over to Eskom, saying you want to find nuclear, you guys do it yourselves.
Well, 2 things must happen. First is that the Department of Energy, the minister must give Eskom a determination. Our RFP is ready. We're waiting for the determination from the Minister of Energy to say, Eskom, you now go and build nuclear. Right now, we've been designated the owner, operator, and the procurer, but we need legislations, we need a determination, it must come. Once it's come, we're ready to issue the inquiry in the market. We hope that it happens this year.
You've been around since long before Medupi and Kusile started. They're still not finished. I mean, we've seen the mess around those particular projects, Eskom-run projects, because Eskom chose them. Would you do nuclear differently?
Absolutely. You see, and this is what we're trying to avoid. The decision to build Medupi and Kusile was 5 years late. And by the time we started building, we were playing a catch-up. And we used designs that did not exist. In other words, we started building, and only when we started planning. In other words, you executed, and then we planned as you executed. That inevitably drives the cost up. And you finish when you finish. You don't know when you're going to finish. We're saying let's plan nuclear properly so that when we start building, we work the plan and we don't plan.
That's the technical stuff out the way. We must talk politics, we must talk Guptas, we must talk coal contracts, we must talk 586 million rand pre-purchase of coal to the Guptas. Why did you not disclose when you were asked on carte blanche about the 586 million rand contract that you'd signed in favour of the Guptas to prepay for coal?
Excellent. I'm glad I'm having the opportunity to talk to it because it's not rare that it's not often the case. We have signed prepayments this year of 3.2 billion rands, and I've signed most of them. I can't remember 100% of them. And it's one of those I could not remember, but once it was brought to my attention, I put the business case for it.
But is it regular practice within Eskom to pay for stuff before it's delivered?
Of course. This year, I'm just saying, this year alone is 3 billion rands.
And historically, within
We've always
Eskom?
done that, and we've given the media the occasions that we've done it.
I mean, and
It's not unusual.
because it's just the timing of it was so interesting because it came just a couple of days before the Gupta signed the Tegeta deal, and it looked like the money that had been forwarded to them to secure the coal supply for Eskom was being used to fund the Tegeta transaction, not necessarily secure coal for Eskom. That's what it smells like.
And I understand why. I understand why it looks like that. Where we are now, we had an emergency. We did not create this emergency. We pre-bought coal, 1.25 million tons of that coal. We had security for it. It's been delivered, and we got our money's worth.
The former chief executive, Brian Molefe, made no secret of the fact that he was good friends with the Guptas. Are they friends of yours?
I don't know them.
Have you never been to the Saxon Ward
I have
Shabin?
not been to a Shabin.
You've never been to the Saxon Ward Shabin? Have you never been to the Gupta compound?
I've never been to the Gupta compound.
I mean, but there are people on the board with Gupta connections. There have been board members of Gupta connections. There has been a suggestion that there's been undue influence on the board of Eskom. Can you give the people of South Africa the assurance that there will be no undue influence by anybody from any part of the economic spectrum in that Eskom boardroom?
There has never been an undue influence, and I've never felt that I've been influenced unduly. Let me give you a perspective. And because I've been in Eskom for a long time, you know there was a guy called Alan Morgan.
I don't.
Alan Morgan was the chief executive of Eskom.
Okay, long before my time.
No, in my time.
Okay.
He was the chief executive of Eskom. He retired from Eskom and was on the Eskom board. And then he was on the board of Exxaro. And in that time, we signed a 40-year contract with Exxaro for Medupi.
Should we have done that?
I see nothing wrong with that, because I have not witnessed conflicts of interest were there, because Alan Morgan sat on the board of Eskom and he sat on the board of Exxaro, and we're adjudicating a 40-year contract. And he was on our audit committee, but he always managed those interests.
Can you assure us that any conflicts will continue to be managed?
The conflict of interests have been managed and will continue to be managed.
Do you think Brian Molefe got a raw deal?
I think he did. I think he did. I looking back at his conduct, at how he conducted himself, I think South Africa have done him very, very badly.
And why do you think he had to quit then?
What
did he tell you?
I spent a lot of time with him, persuading him not to quit. And his statement to me and us was simple. He says it's not unusual in South Africa that when you are accused, that you step aside to clear your name.
It is very unusual in South Africa. Very few people do it.
And he was very clear that he wants to set a precedence of good governance. That I have a clout, I'm going to give the process a chance, and I'll step aside.
Now, day one at the office today. You've not spent much time in the office. You'll be doing interviews like this. Yes. Next week, clean slate. What's the first task? We're
finishing our year in December. In April, we want to finish the year better than last year. We need to conclude on the government guarantees. We need to sign them. They are uncertainty. We need to reduce our primary energy costs. They are too high. But set ourselves for the financial year, and I'm very serious to say, ultimately, Eskom must stop relying on government guarantees, and no state-owned company must do that. And we must restructure ourselves in a manner that does that. We must cut our cloth.
Will you do what Sipho Maseko and Jabu Mabuz have done at Telkom, cut thousands of jobs, reduce the cost? Because the cost base of Eskom is very high.
We must reduce the Eskom costs. We must do that. We must recover our debts. Our municipalities are very high. And government supports Eskom. We either set ourselves on the path that ends up with Eskom unbundled and privatized because it's not competitive, or we take decisions that will protect Eskom and make it competitive.
Have you got the authority to do that?
I do.
Will you do it?
I will.
There we go. Chief Executive, Acting Chief Executive, let's call him Acting Chief Executive of Eskom, Matshela Koko, is day one in the office today, and he's making some very big and strong commitments to the future of the management of Eskom. If he can pull it off, you and I will be better off as a result. More electrifying episodes of the MoneyMakers next time. Till then, have a very good evening. Good night.